All right, I've seen Descendants 4, The Rise of Red with my daughters a couple of times. Now, I've noticed some things in the timeline that are kind of plot holes, but I think I have some theories that might explain them. So, before we get into the theories though, we have to go over a brief timeline of what happens in the movie. So, it all starts when Red and Chloe get sent back in time. Bridget then passes out cupcakes to everyone. Uliana then gets a cupcake, gets transformed pink, and plots to get revenge on Bridget. Bridget then wants to go apologize, but is stopped. And then Ella asks Bridget to castle coming. Red and Chloe then go and help Ella with her chores, but end up breaking a vase, which ends in Ella being grounded. Red and Chloe then go to the Black Lagoon and watch Uliana doing a spell asking for what the painful perfect punishment would be. Then Red and Chloe go and talk to Bridget in her room, where Bridget tells them about the Sorcerer's cookbook. Red and Chloe then break into Merlin's office. Uliana takes the Sorcerer's cookbook from Red and Chloe, ends up being frozen. Merlin finds them and gives them years of detention. And then Red and Chloe go back home. So the biggest plot point is that what did Red and Chloe change? Because when they went forward in time, Red's mom wasn't all off with her head and fighting everyone. She was all caring and hearts. So I think one of the main things that happened is that when Red and Chloe went back in time, they ended up going to get the Sorcerer's cookbook first. Because we know in the original timeline, Uliana got the cookbook, used it for a prank, and which caused the Queen of Hearts to basically become bitter and cold and not positive and caring about everyone. So I think because Red and Chloe went back to get the cookbook first, Uliana and her crew saw them going to get it, and that basically put a delay on their timeline for how long it would take for them to get the cookbook. Basically, in the original timeline, without Red and Chloe there, we know Uliana and her crew got in, got the cookbook, and then got out and escaped without being caught. We know this happens because they pulled the prank and weren't caught by Merlin and weren't given years of detention. And I think that makes sense because when you think about it, Uliana and her crew of Hook and Morgie and Hades and Maleficent, 5 of them working together would just work much more efficiently and faster than just 2 of Red and Chloe, who don't really know the layout, don't really know the office. So I think that kind of explains how Uliana got in and got the cookbook, but it doesn't address the biggest point of how Uliana was able to open the cookbook without the security enchantments that Merlin had put on it, freezing her and detaining her. So I think the only answer is that Uliana didn't open up the cookbook in Merlin's office like she did in the movie. Uliana got the cookbook, and then either through Morgie sending off an alarm and them actually hearing the alarm, they were able to get out and open up the cookbook back at the Black Lagoon and then start their prank to put it in motion. I'll get back on that one later for how they actually got the cookbook opened. But the next point is when Red and Chloe went back in time, another thing that they changed is when they went to help Ella with her chores, they ended up breaking a vase. And I think this is important because this ended up having Ella be grounded and I'm guessing like not being able to go to Castle Coming because she's grounded. Obviously in the Cinderella story, we know she was given a long list of chores to do and had to have a dress and everything. And then right before she was about to go, like her stepsisters tore all their scraps off her dress and she wasn't able to go. The fairy godmother came in and helped her go to see the prince at the ball. I think this is significant because Red and Chloe going back, being there, ended up having Ella be grounded days before the event of Castle Coming. This is important because if she's grounded early, she would have had time to tell Bridget that she was grounded and couldn't go to Castle Coming. I think with Bridget only having the one friend Ella, and really like everyone else in the movie, she had said everyone else has plans. I think with Bridget being so happy that she could go with Ella and then Ella becoming grounded, because Bridget knew about this and Ella would have told her days before the Castle Coming event, Ella then would have, Bridget would have ended up not going to Castle Coming. And this fits in the story though, because then Ella being grounded would have ended up telling Bridget ahead of time. Bridget would have ended up not going, and then at the last minute, Ella's fairy godmother would have come in and helped her like with her dress, and Ella would have ended up going to Castle Coming at the last minute, exactly like she did in her story. The only difference is because the vase was broken by Red and Chloe, Ella was grounded early. Because Ella was grounded early, there was time for her to tell Bridget she was grounded. Bridget then didn't go to Castle Coming, and then Ella ended up going at the last minute, just like she always was going to, except this time, Bridget wasn't there. But the next point is immediately after Bridget passes out her cupcakes, Uliana takes one, gets turned super pink. Bridget feels really bad about that and says she should go and apologize. And turns to go and apologize, but then Red steps in front of her and blocks her way. And then this gives Ella a couple of seconds to then say, no, don't. She did it to herself. Like, she's always bullying us, and explaining that. And I kind of think that it's so small, but I think it's important because Red stopping Bridget from going to apologize there might have ended up having a larger effect down the line. Because I think in the original timeline, Bridget obviously wasn't stopped by Red. Maybe Ella had said, no, don't. But I think without Red and Chloe there, I think Bridget eventually would have gone to apologize to Uliana in person. And I think that might have occurred once Uliana started to get her idea for what her painful, perfect punishment would have been. I think when Uliana did her spell in the Black Lagoon to find out what the painful punishment would have been, she talks about how toxically sweet with a side of pure spite. And I think that is talking not just about the cupcake, but also about Uliana. I think Uliana, in the original timeline, would have started to pretend to be Bridget's friend when Bridget came to apologize. And I think Uliana did that because Uliana and her crew, in the original timeline, once they got the book, went back and then got Bridget to open the book for them. Uliana, pretending to be friends, pretending to be sweet, would have like tried to charm Bridget. And this is something that Bridget would have really wanted to happen, because they say that Bridget's only friend is Ella, and Ella tells them that no matter how like mean Uliana is, that Bridget always turns around and is just like willing to give her another chance, always willing to be like, try to be friends with her. So I also think that fits, because in the spell of a painful perfect punishment, when they're describing the painful perfect punishment, like obviously she said humiliating a girl at her first dance, turning her into a monster in front of everyone, it's just cruel. And that Ella was off with her prince when this happened. So in the original timeline, when Ella and Bridget are at the dance together, Ella is off with her prince, and even though Ella asked Bridget to be there, Ella basically abandoned her. Bridget now isn't entirely alone though, because she's with her second new friend, Uliana, who then offers Bridget a cupcake that Uliana like had baked specially for Bridget from the own cookbook that she had Bridget open for her. And this cupcake turns Bridget into a monster at homecoming and at Castle Coming. But just the physical transformation and everyone laughing at her, that wasn't the painful perfect punishment. The painful perfect punishment comes from the emotional betrayal that Bridget felt from having Uliana, who she kept wanting to give another chance to, kept trying to be positive, kept trying to have her like come around, to having her betray her, and knowing that she used Bridget to facilitate this exact betrayal. I think that was what ended up starting to crack and break, and was just that painful, perfect, emotional punishment to Bridget, making her doubt herself, making her doubt her song, where she sings how life is like life is sweeter when you are like always thinking that the world's gonna be a little bit brighter, the world's gonna be a little bit nicer, and like basically our song of just constantly being positive, constantly trying to be on good terms, that was the betrayal that ended up like just starting to crack, and was just the painfully perfect part of the punishment. Just not the physical transformation, but the emotional like betrayal and punishment that happened to Bridget when she is supposed to be with Ella, and Ella's abandoned her and she's just alone, and she went from having what she thought was 2 friends down to none. And then that's pretty much, there's one other thing that Red and Chloe for sure affected, was they took Hook's boots at the end. But I haven't worked in how that is significant. That might be a big plot point in Descendants 5. But other than that, I think that's my theory for kind of the plot holes for what Red and Chloe ended up actually changing, and in the original timeline, how Uliana was able to pull off the prank and have the cookbook opened for her. Anyway, one take, not perfect, no edits, bye.